Welcome to A Pod Somewhere in Time. I'm your host, John, and I'm here with my co-host, Matthias. You may be streaming this episode or watching it on my YouTube channel, Layer the Alchemist. Either way, welcome. On today's episode, we are going to be discussing Iron Maiden's sixth studio album, Somewhere in Time. Released on September 29th, 1986, the album would bring a slight change of sound to the band with the introduction of guitar synthesizers, a popular versioning audio trend that allowed guitarists to play synthesizer parts from their instruments. The album would go platinum on the strength of the Adrian Smith penned songs Wasted Years and Stranger in a Strange Land, both of which had videos that received frequent rotation on MTV. After the massive and long World Slavery Tour, the band took about 4 months off, reconvening in Longueville on the Jersey Isle for rehearsals. Adrian, Bruce, and Dave weren't keen on recording the entire album in the Bahamas again, so recording of the bass and drum parts took place from March to April at Compass Point Studios in the Bahamas, and guitars and vocals from May to June in Wisseloord, Netherlands. The album was mixed at Electric Lady Studios in the summer of '86. Early scrapped titles for the album were Runner and Silent Running. The unique guitar synth sounds were suggested by Adrian, and although not officially a concept album, it became one by accident, according to Steve. After the extensive World Slavery Tour, the band was experiencing various degrees of burnout, none so more than Bruce, who felt the band needed to try something different for the new album. He famously suggested a few acoustic tracks for the record, but the band asked Martin Birch to say no to them. Bruce claims to have brought 9 songs, all rejected. Songs presented to the band were Tears of the Dragon, which landed on Bruce's solo album Balls to Picasso, and Arc of Space, which would later appear on one of his other solo albums, Accident of Birth. An early version of Moonchild was also offered up by Bruce. There was also an idea titled Run Silent, Run Deep that they worked on but did not make it to the final album. But as it was described as a quote bluesy unquote, it probably was not the same as the one that landed up on No Prayer for the Dying. The Somewhere on tour started in Belgrade, Yugoslavia, now Serbia, on the 10th of September 1986 and ended in Osaka, Japan on April 21st. 151 shows in total. Opening acts for the tour included Wasp, Vinnie Vincent Invasion, Yngwie Malmsteen, Wasted, and Paul Samson's Empire. During the show was a guitar duet known to fans as, quote, walking on glass, unquote. Apart from the solos, it also included the lead theme, Walking in the Air, written by Howard Blake for the animated short film The Snowman. This unique piece of music has never been officially released by the band. The singles and the B-sides for this album we have decided to tackle in their own episode. Okay, Matthias, Somewhere in Time, Iron Maiden. What are your memories and thoughts on this record?
I'm going to start off with something you just mentioned there, which is quite funny. It's about the walking in the air, walking on glass bit that they did live back in '86, '87. And my story with that is I had a bootleg called When It's Time to Rock, recorded in the UK part of the tour in 1986. And they were doing this guitar solo, which is more like a guitar duet, and then they played this lead melody, which is do 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 ba da da do 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 do. And I always liked that part, but I had no idea what it was, no idea. And when we met Bruce and his band touring for the Chemical Wedding in Gothenburg, I asked Adrian about that, and I said, "What is that melody that you played in '86?" And he said, "It's from an animated short that it's called The Snowman." I had never ever heard about The Snowman, and I certainly didn't know where to get it. I couldn't find it on this was during the 90s. I didn't have a DVD player, and VHS copies were not to be found. So just fast forward a year or two, and I was in this mini mart where I lived at the time, and they had like TV screens for where you had like, you could bet on the horses and or football games, stuff like that. So you had the sound playing from the TV, but on the very screen it was this like text TV, it was called, if you remember that. That was a thing back then. And so I'm in this mini mart, and all of a sudden I hear do 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 do, but I couldn't really see anything as I could only hear the sound. So I just rushed home the fastest I could to just switch on the TV and see what is this, what is this, and then I discovered that yes, the Swedish television was broadcasting the Snowman, and eventually I got it on a DVD copy too to have for my collection. It's very beautiful. It's a short about a little boy building a snowman, and it comes alive, and it's like a winter Christmas sort of adventure. It's just 10 or 15 minutes long or something. But I remember being in that mini mart and just hearing those notes going, "Oh, I gotta get home now," so I could switch on the TV and see what it's actually like. So yeah,
And Rainbow would do a version of that. Richie would arrange a version of that on the Bent Out of Shape album, what he just called Snowman.
yeah.
So he sort of
So
liked that
so that
melody
must,
too.
I think it was a book in the late 70s, and I think the music and the animated film is from like 81 or 82, but I can't remember. But it's in the early 80s at least. Anyway, back to your question there. My first impressions. I clearly remember that my friend Patrik Ek got his copy. Like I've said before, I both you and me, we grew up in a very rural area. There were no record store of any, at least, and not anyone that had like new albums, just like mid price or nice price, sort of cheaper editions. And so you have to order by mail. And he got his copy before me. And I remember going to his where he lived with his parents in an apartment, going into his room, and we listened to the album, and we were just, you know, watching the sleeve, going over all the details, and just in awe listening to this album with our jaws literally dropped, I think. And it was I mean, I was 12 back then. So of course, again, at a very impressionable age, uh, I just loved most things about this album. I mean, the cover, as we become accustomed to Maiden, with all the packaging, the sleeve, the photos, the songs, is always like a full concept of ideas, and just put together very nicely as a very luxurious touch on everything. And this album was for sure back then in '86 like their most ambitious with the sleeve and everything. So my impression was in awe. How about you, John?
I remember it was released, it was during the week, and me and a couple other kids at the school, these kids were older than me, and we were all Iron Maiden fans. And the one kid had somehow managed to sneak out of school, go to the mall, and pick up the cassette of the record. And I was sitting, if I went back to my high school, I could show you the exact room that I was in when this happened because it was
Hmm?
kind of a unique room. It was near the cafeteria. And I used to take a music theory class. I was able to take like an elective. So I was sitting in this class, and it was the wall, big window, sort of behind the teacher. And you could see kids walking by. And I remember my friend was standing outside the window holding up the cassette, like, I've got it, I've got it. Yeah. And I think at the time, again, this is the low information age. I don't think I would have seen the cover ahead of time. or anything. So it was kind of exciting. Like you said, the cover I thought looked really cool. It felt kind of like Power Slave, where there were a lot of little things going on in the cover, even more so. It seems like they stepped that up even more. And even though I had a cassette copy of it, it folded out and everything, and it looked there was just a lot of stuff there. It always felt like at this point in time, Iron Maiden was giving you a lot of value for your money. So I was super excited about it. I mean, Iron Maiden was at the peak of their powers in the US as far as their visibility, and
Mm.
with Power Slave and Live After Death, they were just immensely popular. So this was everybody was waiting for this record. And in hindsight, I look back now and I realize that this is where the cracks started to form for me with Iron Maiden. Now, at the time, low information age, way before streaming and all that stuff, I was very happy to have new Iron Maiden. And over time, this album, I was thinking of this today, that if I were to, in the last 15 years, if or 20 years, if I were to add up which album from Bruce's original run I've listened to the most in the last 10 to 15 years, it would probably be this record, because it doesn't have the burnout factor with various songs that all the previous albums have. Wasted Years has a burnout factor for me, but this album feels like an album full of deep cuts. But at the time, and I don't know if I've even used this expression yet, but we're approaching this, and I'm going to certainly bring it up with Seventh Son of the Seventh Son. We're approaching what I like to dub my years away from metal, which was roughly like 88, 89 till like about 92, 93. And part of it was back then you didn't have streaming and all that. So whatever albums you had, you had. And I was playing these records to death. Got Somewhere in Time. I loved it. I played it like crazy. But I just remember there were being little things that made me feel like this album wasn't as good as the previous records at the time. This is how I felt. Again, remember, there's no burnout factor. In '86, I wasn't burnt out on The Trooper and Running Free and Wrathchild and all that stuff. But I remember for the mix being the first thing that sort of was a little like, oh, I wasn't quite sure what the thing. The guitars didn't sound as present to me. And in hindsight now, I know that there's just a lot of reverb on this record. A lot of stuff is washed out in reverb. And it wasn't enough for me to say, oh, I don't like this record. But it was enough for me to notice that there was something going on. Like,
Mm.
oh, gee, the guitars kind of don't sound like all the records before this. It was just kind of like, okay, but it's new Iron Maiden and I love it.
Mm.
But that was like number one. I noticed like, oh, there's something going on with the mix here. Number two was the synthesizer sounds. Not that I had a problem with it at the time. And as my life has moved on, I very much appreciate synthesizers and that kind of sound. But at the time, being a guy that was like, guitar, guitar, give me guitar. I don't need no synths. That was kind of like, oh, and I should have looked this up. I forget what year Priest's Turbo record came out, but Judas Priest would do something similar.
It's 86 as well.
Yeah, so there
Yeah.
was kind of like this, it seemed like a thing that people were doing.
Yeah.
Next for me was the picture on the inside sleeve. It was the first time that I looked at something and went, "Oh wow, that looks really stupid." I hated the picture on the inside. I didn't like Adrian's haircut. I hated those motorcycles or whatever, the three-wheel bikes. I just thought it looked stupid, which was really disappointing because, again, before this, Maiden was untouchable. Nothing they did was wrong,
I,
but
I
all of
think
a
I think
sudden,
the I think the most offensive part with that photograph is Bruce's short T-shirt.
yeah. And isn't somebody wearing a hat in the picture? Is it Nico that's wearing a hat?
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
And again, these seemed kind of silly, right? But this was a band that did no wrong for me up until this point. Nothing they did was wrong. Everything they did was perfect. And all of a sudden, I'm like, gee, the guitars don't sound like the previous albums. You know,
Mm.
strike what? There's one thing. Oh, the other thing was is the song titles. I looked at the song titles and I was like, oh, Heaven Can Wait. Uh, I don't like that. I remember thinking like, ooh, that's not a that title. The Loneliness of the Long Distance Runner. And these were again things. So once I listened to the song, I said, "Hey, it's new Iron Maiden. Who cares?" But again, it was the difference between getting Power Slave and going, "Rhyme of the Ancient Mariner, Aces High," Lost for oh my, Power Slave, oh, Back in the Village. Oh my gosh, like I can't wait to listen to this record. These song titles rule. To Heaven Can Wait, that doesn't sound very exciting. Just kind of being a little bit like the band that could do no wrong was all of a sudden like, uh-oh. That was kind of the feeling a little bit. Now I listened to the record and I loved it and I played it to death. But these were all little things, the mix, the song titles, the picture on the inner sleeve. They were the beginnings. At the time, I didn't see it, but this was the beginning of the cracks, the crack in the armor. Before this, I thought Iron Maiden was invincible. There was nothing. Iron Maiden was perfect. There was nothing that they did that wasn't absolutely outstanding. And now all of a sudden, it was like, uh-oh, there's there's a little something here. Now, like I said, I loved it when I listened to it. And over time, this has become a favorite record because again, it feels like there's deep cuts on it. It feels like there's stuff for me to sort of discover. But in hindsight, I think I mentioned it in the opening introduction that Bruce wanted to go in a different direction or try something different. Let's put it to you that way. I
Yeah.
don't think he
Yeah.
wanted to change the band or anything. And in hindsight, I think that was the smart way to think, and they should have done that. A live album capping off a chapter in the band's history, their career would have been a perfect time for them to do a slight pivot and to surprise me. This was the other thing. This was the first time where there was nothing that was like just completely blowing my mind. Like I listened to Rhyme of the Ancient Mariner for the first time and was just like, oh my God, my mind blown. This was like, yeah, these songs are good, but there
Mm.
was there wasn't anything that I was like, oh my gosh, this is just I can't believe that they did this. I
But
didn't expect this.
you're talking about hindsight here, and I think that I'm not arguing and saying that you are wrong, but hear me out. If you in '86 reacted and thought that okay, a song title like Heaven Can Wait isn't perhaps tough or metal enough, how would you have reacted back then in '86 if Bruce had all his songs folky, bluesy kind of material on an album back then? Do you actually think that it would have been like the good move for them to have gone? And I'm not talking in hindsight. I'm talking about
Yeah,
how would
at
you have
that
felt back?
time, I don't know. That's an interesting question because as a kid, I just wanted more metal. And if
Mm,
they had done something too, like I'm sort of contradicting myself in some ways. Like as a kid, I wanted them to just keep giving me Icarus and Mariner and
mm,
Prowler and
yeah,
monsters and airplanes and war and stuff like that, titles that sounded really cool. Whereas Heaven Can Wait, yeah, that's them maybe trying to do something a little different, but uh I don't know. I think if maybe I guess the hindsight part about it is going to play more into when Seventh Son comes around for me.
mm,
And when Seventh Son comes around, I heard Can I Play with Madness? And I was like, nope. And I was just burnt out. I was burnt out on din 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 din. It had been 7, 6, 7, 8 straight years of listening to that every day, and I just got burnt out on it. So I think if they had threaded the needle the right way, now a full Jethro Tull acoustic record or something, that probably would have been a bridge too far. But for
Mm.
instance, if Tears of the Dragon done somewhat like Bruce landed up doing it on Balls to Picasso,
Mm. Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
that would have been enough of a change for me to go, wow, this is kind of different, but man, this song kicks. This is a great chord. This is different, but the chorus, kicks in this. This is kind of interesting, Maiden
Mm.
going and, maybe if there was an acoustic number on there, maybe I know that Seventh Son would be like they're probably their most progressive album up to that point. So maybe if they had just explored with some different things, maybe taken some of Bruce's ideas, maybe I wouldn't have accepted, maybe I would have been a little hesitant about it at the time, but it might have kept my interest and it might have held me through the next couple records because honestly, I think that this record, after this, is when the decline starts.
Mm.
So, I mean, Seventh Son, in as time has gone on, I like Seventh Son as much as I like Somewhere in Time. So let's say after Seventh Son, but this is sort of the beginning of the end for Bruce. Probably if you trace back, where was the initial seed planted for
Yeah.
Bruce's eventual departure? It's probably here
Yeah,
on this
that's true.
record.
And I mean, he's talked about that he at the time he felt very disappointed that they wouldn't. Uh, there was uh, there was this "Run Silent, Run Deep" song, which was kind of bluesy that they actually started to put down the backing tracks for, but never finished. So as far as we know, we don't think there is any like hidden gem recorded with vocals of that song. But it would be very, of course, me as a Maiden nerd, I would find hearing a song like that extremely interesting. But again, I think you have a point where you say that maybe a song like Tears of the Dragon made in a somewhere in time-ish kind of way would have worked. Arc of Space is just an acoustic, mellow song, and maybe that would have been like one step too far away. But again, we only know what they sounded like when they were recorded. I mean, Balls to Picasso and Accident to Birth came out many years after 1986. So we don't really know in what shape or form they actually were back then. We can only speculate. One thing that I've thought about preparing for this album is, and you've touched upon this already. You talked about the sound quality and the mix of the album. And for many, this is Adrian's album. This is Adrian's Iron Maiden. So of course he was the sole writer behind the the two singles, Wasted Years and Strange in a Strange Land. He also wrote Sea of Madness. Like you also said in the introduction, Adrian was the one who suggested that they should use guitar synths to do something new, do something else. And I also believe, I'm not sure about this, but I believe that it was Adrian that suggested that they should use the Gallien-Kruger solid state amps, which was a step away from the Valve amps that they used Marshalls before. And the Gallien-Kruger does have a very, when you hear someone play a Gallien-Kruger amplifier, it just sounds like
Mhm.
Somewhere in Time. The sound is literally in the amplifier, and it's a tiny amplifier. It's not bigger than like this something. So I mean, it is true in a way that it is Adrian's album. He was also for the first time there present while the album was mixed. So he was in New York with Martin Birch mixing the album. So of course, Adrian came from a more sort of melodic background. And as the times evolved in the 80s, he was more keen on the more AOR type of sounds that was coming out. Some of his mates were in bands like doing that kind of music that we now associate so heavily with the 80s. big reverbs,
Yeah.
washed out drums and everything. So that is true. But, and this is the what I think is the twist of this. Yes, it is Adrian's album because of all these things I've mentioned. But let's not forget some of these stuff were like okayed, so to speak, by Steve. Wasted Years was, and we will talk about the songs eventually. But I think this is interesting in this case that Wasted Years was personally by Adrian seen as too soft, too melodic.
Mm.
So it was just by accident that Steve got to hear it as Adrian was doing a playback of his demos on tape, of course. And as before he pressed stopped, the opening riff for Wasted Years came on, and Adrian was about to just turn off the tape recorder, and Steve said, "No, no, wait, what's that? That sounds interesting," because Adrian had played a few songs that Steve wasn't too keen on, that he thought was too melodic, too AOR-ish. And so again, it's again Steve that sort of has the final say. And it's also easier to get the impression of the album being a bit more, what word should I use? Lush, a bit more
Hmm.
lush or a bit more mellow because of the sound of the album. But as we will go through all the songs, you can hear that most songs are very fierce, very up tempo, and the drum parts are very intense. It's not like an AOR album in that aspect. It has the like some of the sound traits of the 80s, but it's still very, very much Iron Maiden, very much Steve Harris Gallop all over the album, apart from maybe Wasted Years and Stranger in a Strange Land.
Yeah, I agree with all those points. I think this album also has it it has the thing of it's a really good record, but when you've put the stuff you've put out before it, it's hard to it's hard to live up to. We talked about on the last episode, Rhyme of the Ancient Mariner. Like, is that the best song Steve has ever written? Is it the last great Steve Harris written song? And even at that age, I was very aware of like Phantom of the Opera. Wow. Hallowed be thy name. Oh, wow. Oh, another level. Rhyme of
Mm,
the Ancient Mariner. Oh my goodness. They've really, this is like, I didn't think they could, I didn't think Phantom of the Opera could be topped. Then I didn't think Hallowed be thy name could be topped. Then I didn't,
mm,
then all of a sudden Rhyme of the Ancient Mariner walks into the room and you're like, oh my God, this is just incredible. Alexander the Great. Yeah, this is a cool song. Yeah, I like this. Was I like, whoa, sorry, Rhyme of the Ancient Mariner, there's a new king in town. No, it felt like, and that's no fault of, sometimes when I say these things on my YouTube channel, people think I'm saying I don't like this song. But
mm,
it's the problem of when you write a song as amazing as Rhyme of the Ancient Mariner, what can you do after that? Can you
mm,
really write a better song in that same kind of mold? Epic last song on the record type of thing. Can you
mm,
write a better song than that? I would say no, so don't
mm,
even try. And what happens is Alexander the Great occupies that same space, but it's not as good as Rhyme of the Ancient Mariner. It's
mm.
still a great song, love it. And it was a song for years that everybody was clamoring for them to play live.
Yeah.
But it's just, if I just line the two songs up, for me, Rhyme of the Ancient Mariner is just a better song. So there was a little
Mm,
bit of that, whether I was directly conscious of it, I'm not
mm,
sure. I think in the end at that time, I was just like, it's new Iron Maiden. I worship Iron Maiden, so I love it.
mm,
I think in the back of my mind, I was kind of aware that, yeah, new Iron Maiden, happy that it's here, but it just didn't. it felt like every album before this to me got better and better and better and better and better, and this one felt like a sideways move, or
Mm,
maybe even a very slight step down for me. I'm
yeah,
pretty sure that even at that age, I was aware, like, yeah, I really like this record, but I like Power Slave better.
yeah.
It
And
was,
I think it's fair to say also that the band somehow, by not choosing a lot of songs to play from these albums, I mean, until the last, well, there is a tour going right now, of course, but the Future Past tour, they have like only played
yeah,
Wasted Years and Heaven Can Wait, and that's pretty much it. Uh, then they did a Future Past tour where they played more than half the album, of course. But I mean, it it sort of tells that the band themselves wasn't that. And maybe um, another thing, and I've read like press releases, interviews from '86, and to me as a fan, as I was going through the songs, I immediately realized that wait, what? There's no Bruce song. Hasn't Bruce done any songs? But in I couldn't find a single one where the journalist actually asked Bruce about, hey, what's up with this? You haven't done any songs for this album. What's that all about? Maybe there is some interview somewhere where he talks about this in '86, that is. But I'm not, I can't recall right now. And I mean, maybe that is one of the, I mean, Adrian's songs doesn't need Bruce's lyrics. I think Wasted Years,
hmm,
Sea of Madness, and Stranger in a Strange Land are as good as they could get.
yeah,
The song melodies are top notch. The lyrics are really, really good too. So it's not like, these songs needed a Bruce somewhere.
right,
And Bruce talked about that. He didn't need to help him out as he had all these ideas himself. But maybe somewhere on the album, we do miss the Bruce factor a bit. Of course, Bruce is all over the album. His vocals are as good as on any of the '80s recordings. I think Bruce's vocal performance is extremely professional, and I will mention a few examples of these as we go through the songs. But again, maybe in hindsight, maybe they should have added something by Bruce just to for the balance or for the variety, the
yeah.
variation going through the album. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that if they had just said to themselves, using the rhyme of the Ancient Mariner thing again, hey, we've done this and we've done it as good as anybody can do it.
Mm,
So let's not try to do that again. Let's
mm,
try to do something different. You know,
mm,
and I think you know, you're mentioning Adrian stuff like maybe this direction of it, maybe they would have fallen on their face with it, but Wasted Years is sort of this melodic rock. That's an example of if you had described it to me as a kid, hey, their next record's gonna have this song and it's really melodic and it sounds like a melodic rock, I would have been like, ooh, don't do that, Iron Maiden. But when you hear it, you're like,
yeah.
whoa, this what a great song, man. That like,
Yeah.
but the riff is so catchy. That little one E string pull off riff is so catchy. The
Yeah.
chorus is fantastic. The lyrics are super, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It worked. I guess that's what I'm
Yeah. Yeah.
saying. It was
And
taking a chance and it worked. So maybe they
yeah.
should have sort of pushed themselves and you know, to just maybe they could have done more melodic stuff. Maybe an acoustic number, maybe that would have worked. Maybe, hey, with the synthesizers, maybe something with more synthesizers on it could have worked.
Hmm.
I don't know, but just when it started to feel like I didn't feel like Rhyme of the Ancient Mariner was like, oh, this is just, this is just you're trying to be hallowed be thy name and it ain't working. You know, I didn't feel like that. I feel like they took it to another level. But here there's just moments on here where it's starting to sound samey. Like there's some things on here that are starting to sound like, oh, okay, well, this is just kind of what Iron Maiden does and everything. And it would have been a good time. I just did a video on my Lair the Alchemist channel of Exit Stage Left from Rush, their second live record. And Rush was very good about this. Their live records were always the end of a chapter for the band, and they always moved, try to start pivoting in a different. It isn't. They didn't make a 180-degree turn. They would just start pivoting in a different direction, and some people liked it, some people didn't. After Exit Stage left, they started to getting way more into the synthesizers and all that kind of stuff. So a lot of people don't like that, but you gotta say, all right, hey, at least these guys, they were very Rush seemed very conscious of, hey, we can't go in a straight line. We gotta zigzag and move a little here, move a
Mm.
little there, and try to push the band in different directions. And this just timing wise would have been the time for them to do it. They did the live record, what they achieved with everything else. This would have been a good time for them to start pivoting in a slightly different direction. And I think it's this. Again, I think that this is what's going to lead to Bruce eventually leaving the band, is that they sort of start getting stuck in a rut. I would say that really
Mm.
starts happening on No Prayer for the Dying and Fear of the Dark, where their wheels are spinning in the mud on those records to varying degrees. And I just think that, and at that point, it was too late. Like that pivot should have happened here, and it could have carried them, I think, through that phase and brought them. I don't know, it just might
I
have
I,
been.
th- I think that depending on who you ask in the band, I think they would. I mean, Bruce would certainly agree with you that they should have. Later, he have talked about that he thought that they should try out and go in another direction just to don't get stagnant and stuck in a rut. I think with Adrian's input on the album, I think that he was a bit more pleased to see his ideas a bit more melodic, getting on the album. And if you ask Steve, he will probably say that, yeah, they really pushed their boundaries with somewhere in time because of the sound and because of Adrian's songs
Yeah, and
and
the
even his.
synthesizers. Yeah,
Yeah. So I think that maybe if you ask Steve, he would say, "Yeah, we did that. We did that with Somewhere in Time." And he, there's one. He spoke about Heaven Can Wait Somewhere, and he was like, when he first wrote it, he thought this is a bit too happy and too commercial, I think was the word he used. But then again, he thought that, but when we get to play it as a band with Nico and me on bass, the guys on guitar and Bruce singing it, it will be Iron Maiden. And of course, he's right in that way. It is a quite poppy, Heaven Can Wait. It's
yeah.
quite poppy chorus, but it still sounds extremely much like Iron Maiden. So maybe before we go into the actual songs, should we have the show and tell part and talk a bit about the cover and a few additions?
Go for it.
Go for it. I think one of the more interesting details that we get to know in the pop-up book, Run for Cover, where he interviews Derek. One of the interesting things is that was, I think, among the first times that where I actually learned that the actual size of the painting isn't much bigger than this.
Oh
It
wow.
is painted. It is painted in. Let's see now. It's 15 inches, and this is of course 12 inches, so
Yeah.
it's just a little bit scaled down, which makes all the details the more impressive when you talk technical about actually doing something like this. And of course, we could be discussing the sleeve itself for like a complete episode uh, in itself. But I just made like a top three of my favorite small details. Uh, and this, of course, if you're listening to the podcast version, you can't really see where I'm pointing at the sleeve. But the first thing that I think is really funny is that on the back sleeve, there's like a bridge over the road where the band is standing. And
Yeah.
there is a sign that says Herbert Ailes. And Ailes, it's spelled like AILS. So it says that Herbert is not well. And the Herbert they are referring to is, of course, Frank Herbert, who said no when they wanted to use uh, uh, Dune as a title for what
Uh,
became or is today known as To Tame a Land. So that was a bit of a dig at Frank Herbert, Herbert Ailes. That's funny. Uh, we also have, and this I learned through Martin Popoff's Derek Riggs book. I didn't know this. I have never seen it before. But if you look at the front cover, the front of the sleeve, in the windows down here in reverse, it says, "This is a very boring painting," and I had no idea. And it goes on the back as well. This is a very boring painting. That's funny. And my on my top three, at the back of the cover, a bit down, and if you just look at the road that is behind the band, there is this sign in the very, very far distance that says Metal Club, tonight, Gypsy's Kiss, which is,
yeah.
of course, Steve's first band, Gypsy's Kiss. So that's funny. And we have the TARDIS from Doctor Who
Mm.
and Star Trek and Batman and everything. So that is funny. I don't. There was no picture disc made for this album, but every true, of course, Maiden collector has to get their hands on the Japanese version of Somewhere in Time, which is great. It came with a sticker. It also came with a 7-inch single called On Their Own Words, which is an interview single with them talking about the album and themselves. There is also a booklet in the same size as the sleeve with a lot of photographs, stuff like that, which is really
Wow.
nice. And of course, a Japanese pressing, which is always a treat when it comes to the sounds, and a big obi, of course, as well.
Wow.
So Somewhere in Time, the Japanese version is really, really something to look out for. I guess I bought my copy like somewhere in the late 80s. I guess they're a bit more expensive now than what I paid back then. Yeah.
All right.
Should we get on to
Awesome.
the very
Yeah. Let's get on to the songs. All right. So the album opens with Caught Somewhere in Time, a Steve Harris pen number. I think this is a great intro. It has a sci-fi-ish vibe to it that I remember when hearing that tying into the album cover. Eddie is kind of a futuristic looking Eddie, cyborg looking Eddie there. And I like the way this song opens, even though the synthesizers are in there and they sort of jump out at you. I think it really works here, sets up an atmosphere. And then the song just rips, it's got the high energy. The chorus is great. I think the guitar solos are fantastic. I actually think the mix works really well here, especially with the guitar solos. They're given this sort of distant sound to them, which makes it kind of sound like a outer space type sound, futuristic thing going on. So yeah, great album opener for me. I've always liked this song, just for the energy, for the intro, for the guitar solos, for the chorus.
it is quite long
Yeah,
to
seven
be to
minutes,
be
22 seconds.
yeah, to be. And I mean, of course, you have the intro, which is like a song of its own, but that's great too. With the intro, it just builds up the momentum, builds up the atmosphere and everything. So it just when it just bursts out with the main song, it's just I think it's a great one, and it was really really nice to hear them do this one live again on the previous tour, Future Past tour. Um, a bit of trivia about this song is that Steve said somewhere that it was sort of quote unquote inspired by a 1979 movie called Time After Time, starring Malcolm McDowell. And the film is about H.G. Wells, who was a science fiction author. So he was like the main character of this film. and it's of course about time travel, and he was inspired by that and wrote a lyric loosely, very loosely based on that film. Like I said, I really love the song. And you mentioned the guitar solos. I would say that Adrian's solo on this very song is one, well, maybe even top three of all his solos. I think it's so brilliantly executed. The melodic, the tone, the taste, the composition. You know, I actually start to cry when I got to hear this
Uh,
live
I
when
remember you
I,
saying,
I was witnessing the tour premiere in Slovenia 2 years ago. I just think it's good, and I mean, there's nothing wrong with Dave's solo, but Adrian's solo is just up there. And yeah, great opening track. I really like "Caught Somewhere in Time."
yeah, that whole that's just a
Mm,
great melody there. Yeah, and I kind of like the vibe that the synthesizers give this, and it gives it kind of a, like I said, sort of a futuristic sci-fi vibe. So yeah, great one. Wasted Years. All right.
mm,
Burnout factor for sure on this one, but when they play it live, it's one of those songs you love to hear it live, singing along to it live. Actually, I find when they play this song live, they play it too fast, and it
mm,
takes away from. So this song, the tempo that it's at right here is the perfect tempo, and for some bizarre reason, they can't seem to line up this guitar intro and the rest of the song like the it's always too slow live, and then all of a sudden it gets really fast in the verse. So I never particularly liked the way they played this song live because I think the tempo that it's at right here, this sort of medium fast tempo,
mm,
is the perfect spot for it. That guitar lick at the beginning is just immediately catches your ear. It's very, very catchy. Love Steve's little bass solo that he plays there at the beginning. And this got a lot of play on MTV, man. And I remember really liking the video. It's basically just them in the studio. But it's just super cool. You know, Steve's got Bruce is singing up against the microphone and everything. And so
mm,
great song. I love kind of the lyrics to it. The lyrics, pretty straightforward message. Don't waste a time, live in the moment, type of thing. I think that's fantastic. I can't remember if we did this on, no, we did do it on Layer of the Alchemist, but I don't think you were there. It was with the Maiden A to Z guys, Eric and Jonathan, where we created what we wanted to be our dream Iron Maiden set list. And one of the things that I said was is that after they play Doctor Doctor, that they should play a recording of Wasted Years. I think we were saying if it was their last tour, like what would be the
mm,
set list for the last show? And
yeah.
I said I'd like them to play Doctor Doctor, and then I would like them to play Wasted Years, but the recording, and to be showing clips of the band go all the way back to Steve and Gypsy's Kiss, right? And
Mm,
as the song goes on, the pictures come by faster and faster until the last chord hits and it's an image of them standing backstage waiting to, run out onto the stage for the opening
mm,
number. I just thought that would be like the perfect, and this would be a song that I think if when they eventually do, if they play an announced final show, let's put it that way, if people are
mm,
aware that they are playing their final show and they play this song, I think that there'll be tears in people's eyes because of the lyrics and everything. I think the lyrics are great in it. The chorus is great in it. Uh, it's just a very well written, can we call this a metal song? I guess you could call it also just a great, great hard rock song. It's just a very, very well written song. It's
mm,
very catchy. It's everything in the right place. All the little hooks from the opening guitar lick to Steve's little bass melody. The way it builds into the guitar solos is fantastic. The way the
mm.
guitar
Oh yeah.
solos have a lot of energy. It's just it and it's how long is it? I'm guessing it's not particularly 5 minutes, a little long
Mm,
for a radio single, but it doesn't everything everything feels really good about it. And We mentioned these Adrian Smith songs. Adrian seems to have a knack for this melodic hard rock and type of sound, and he really nails it on this one. I
Mm.
mean, is this the most you'd have to say this is Adrian's most recognizable song, that
Yeah,
he
yeah.
written for the band by far. And it's kind of one of those moments like when this comes up in the show, it's kind of like a family moment, with the band. Everybody
Mm.
you sing along with it. It's a feel good song, but it still has a cool metal vibe to it. It really walks that line of doesn't sound like they're selling out. I don't remember hearing this and being like, oh, they're selling out trying to have a hit single. No, I didn't think that at all. I just thought that like, wow, this is different, but it's like a really cool hard rock song, but it still had the Maidenisms in it, the bass fills, Steve's
Mm.
little bass fills and the guitar solos themselves, and everything. The background vocals and the harmonies are just fantastic when that chorus kicks in. So yeah, really, really well written. Uh, just a well-written song. Little burnout factor on it, but I can still recognize that this is a fantastic song.
Yeah, of course, the 12-year me loved this song when it came out. And you talk about recognizable Adrian songs. I mean, these three songs are the only songs that he has written entirely by himself. So in that sense, it's true. But I would say that a song like 2 Minutes to Midnight, which is also Flight of
Yeah, that's
Icarus,
up
is
there
also,
too.
yeah, it's also very recognizable for Adrian. Like I said before, he thought it was too soft. Maybe he had thought of a slightly different kind of arrangement for the song or something. But again, when the band play this, and I would especially like to mention Nico McBrain, his drumming is so melodical, if you could use that word on drumming. Imagine a drummer just going straight over the
Mm.
guitar riff to get in the verses. I mean, you can't play this song that way, but I mean, a drummer of lesser quality and musicality would probably just do it much more simple. But Nico McBrain is just playing the song extremely, extremely well. So the original title was Golden Years, which is a bit lame, I think.
Yeah.
But that's what they sing in the chorus, of course. But I'm glad they changed it. And yeah, the solos. I really like this song. Maybe a slight bit of burnout, but I think what irritates me the most is what you just said about the tempo when they do it live. They do the intro bit very in the right tempo, and then for the coast of gold, and then all of a
Yeah.
sudden it's just multiple BPMs faster and
Yeah.
just goes, which is
And then when that
once,
thing comes back in, when the did when the intro lick comes back in, all of a sudden the tempo drops down, and then all of a
yeah,
sudden it just races off during the guitar solo. It's like, "Blah, blah, 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 blah," and then they're like back into the guitars.
yeah,
And when I was preparing for this, I was sort of listening to it on the recording. I'm like, does it is there some degree of that on the recording? I was thinking like maybe
yeah.
there's some degree of it and it's just gotten exaggerated live. And I said, from the coast of gold. I'm like, no, they're in tempo. I have no
Mm,
idea where over time this happened, where they play the intro lick really slow and then they just like blast out of the gate for the verse and everything, where this sort of happened in their I'd be interested to go back and listen to when they were first playing this live. Did they do it like that? And like you said, when the verse is too fast, it should from the coast of gold across the seven seas. But when it's from the coast of gold across the seven seas, when it's at just the right tempo here. And when they speed it up too much, it actually takes away from the song, which is a bummer.
mm. It
I
is,
find
it
it
is,
distracting.
it is distracting, but nonetheless, it's a great song, and I think that Adrian would say it's served him well over the years, being such a huge single and everything.
Oh
So,
yeah.
yeah. Mm,
Okay, Sea of Madness. All right, so this is one that falls into the category of I like it more now than I did back then.
mm,
I remember back then kind of feeling like yeah, this is good. But after Somewhere in Time or Caught Somewhere in Time and Wasted Years, it didn't, I didn't feel like, and I guess I would say I still don't think it's as good as those first two songs. And especially back then, I kind of felt like that, like, oh, wow, like, this album was, the momentum gets taken away a little bit on this record rather quickly for me. Loved Caught Somewhere in Time, and then Wasted Years has a different feel to it and everything. It was just like, whoa, where's this album is really shaping up to be amazing. And then Sea of Madness was like, yeah, okay, this is a good song, but it wasn't like mind blowing the way I thought the first two songs on the record were. But it now, as I sit back and listen to this record now, these are the type of songs that I enjoy more. But I think it's a good song. I don't think it's not as good as Wasted Years and Caught Somewhere in Time.
Mhm. I absolutely love this song, and actually, I think you're right in that way. When I first heard it, maybe it didn't have that sort of huge impression on me as a 12-year-old or going into my teenage years. So I think it's fair to say that it's grown on me over the years. And we did this song with my band. Dead Cosmonaut was more or less the the place in Dead Cosmonaut was we had an Iron Maiden covers band called Strangers in a Strange Band like 20 years ago or something. And we did this song. And playing it myself, I just grew even more fond of it. I just love the Steve clank. I mean, how the
Yeah,
bass just
yeah,
jumps out. Doo doo. You
yeah, yeah,
can you can hear the string just being punished by
yeah,
by Steve on this song. They did this one live actually on the early dates on the European tour, and they played it for I think they played it for maybe one or two or three gigs in North America before they dropped it. Uh, so maybe the band themselves didn't really think it held up that well, but I just love this song, and it's also interesting that I think I mentioned that before that Wasted Years, Stranger in a Strange Land are both two very sort of melodic songs. And even though Sea of Madness has a very strong chorus, very melodic, it's still it's still quite fierce with the rhythm track, with the drums and the bass. It's quite aggressive.
yeah,
It's sort of pounding, which I think just makes the song the more interesting actually. Uh, and Bruce's vocals, fantastic, right up there. There is one little detail that I enjoy, and that is the guitar melody thing that Adrian is playing before going into the solo. Do 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 do, you
yeah.
know, and that is in my book at least that's very much Michael Schenker inspired because he
Hmm.
often do that where he plays like a sort of lead
Melody.
melody
Yeah,
that sort of it's a gateway into the solo. And here Adrian is doing that, and I love his solo. It's really good. And again, the bass track we've talked about this quite a few times before on this pod. That when Steve is not the chief songwriter, his bass part is even more elaborate. And
yeah,
on a song like you mentioned on Wasted Years and on Sea of Madness, in this case, his bass parts is so you can just listen to the bass and it's
yeah,
like a whole composition in itself. So I love this. I like the slow part, madness, no, no,
yeah,
before it builds up and gets going again. Just a little bit of dynamic that just makes the song so much wider, like a widescreen sort of experience. I love this song, and maybe you are right in that it's because of the burnout factor of some of the other songs that I enjoy this as much as I do today. But I like to think anyway that it comes down to the very basic quality of the song and the songwriting here. So, and I mean, if we talk about burnout factor, Wait, over to you, John.
Oh, Heaven Can Wait. Uh, this is my least favorite song on the record. Uh, you mentioned the chorus earlier. It Wasted Years is a very melodic chorus, but it really works. Heaven Can Wait uh, doesn't work as much. It sounds slightly awkward. It sounds to me like writing choruses like Wasted Years comes natural for Adrian and it's forced for Steve. This sounds like a forced melody line to me. Like it's not really something. If a singer was sitting down with an acoustic guitar, he probably wouldn't sing it quite like that. If they were strumming a song and singers thinking melody lines, that I just don't like it. Heaven can wait. It repeats too much. It has this feel to it that I just don't really care for. And again, I'm a person who loves melodic rock. But to me, it's not a terrible song. But if you're saying Wasted Years and Heaven Can Wait are kind of vying for the same lane, if you will, Wasted Years is way better than Heaven Can Wait. And if I have to rank the songs on this record, this just comes in last for me. And
Mm,
it's mostly because of the chorus and just sort of the vibe of the song. And it's kind of long too, 7:24. It does have some cool little sections and changes in it and everything, but I just don't like this chorus. I don't like the title, Heaven Can Wait. I just think I don't like that title. Uh, and if I had to rank the songs on this record, this would land at last for me. And I'd probably give it like a 6 out of 10.
mm. I have to agree with you. It is by far my least song of the album too, and uh, I'm not a musical theory kind of guy, but I think it was either Henrik or Fredrik Folkar that I play with in Dead Cosmonaut that pointed out that the chorus has a major scale, but the chords are minor somewhere, so that they should have changed the melody line for the chord. So I think it's the last chord or something like that. Again, I can hear that there is something not right going on there, but yeah, Heaven Can Wait was like a mainstay in the set for several tours, and I think that comes down to the simple reason because of the sing along part in the middle. The
Oh,
whoa,
I hate that
whoa,
part.
whoa,
I
whoa,
forgot
whoa.
about that. I hate that part.
Sorry
That
to bring
just
it up
sounds
then.
so stupid to me. And it sort of signals the beginning of this, like Steve, he'll come back to this well too often, this kind of like soccer chant thing. It just doesn't work for me. It
Mm,
just doesn't work. I hate that part. The way the vocals are mixed in that part, it just sounds stupid to me. And it just, whoa, 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 whoa. I don't know what they're going for there. Are they going for a soccer crowd, happy soccer crowd sing along? Are they going for monks
I think so.
in a temple like thing? It doesn't come across the right way. And Steve would kind of come back, dun, 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 again, it's like this is a good example of this song. And again, I don't know if I was conscious of this at the time, but the fatigue factor with Iron Maiden is kind of like, oh, dun, 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 dun. And it just doesn't seem very clear. Whoa, like it seems forced. It doesn't come across the right way. I know what they're trying to think, like, oh, when they play this live, people
Mm,
love to do that when they're live to sing along with the things. And I guess it probably works in that environment. But to me, this is just like Steve's songwriting is when I look at the songs on this record that Steve wrote, all right, Caught Somewhere in Time, fantastic.
mm.
This, no. We're going to talk about Loneliness, the long distance runner. And now Steve only has four writing credits, sole writing
Mm,
credits on here. He has a
yeah.
co-write with Dave, but Steve's songs just on their own, no. This song is a good example of what's and I could tie this to who wrote Can I Play with Madness? Is that a Bruce song?
It's a initially it was an Adrian Bruce song, and then Steve added things. So it's the three of them who are getting credits.
Right. I always mention that hearing Can I Play with Madness was like my out moment. And the seed was probably planted with this song because they sort of feel the same way to me, like sort of sing along choruses that I don't like. Wasted Years is a sing along chorus, but it's fantastic. When you're trying to do stuff like this, what's that quote or what movie was that from? There's a fine line between clever and stupid. Well,
Mm,
this falls for me on the wrong side of the line. It just
yeah.
doesn't work for me. And this would become problem. Let's put it this way. This becomes problematic with the band moving forward for me. This starts to become a thing. Songs like this that just really miss the mark for me.
The same. Yeah, again, over the years going to multiple Maiden tours and seeing the band play this song, it always felt like a bit of a missed opportunity to me to play something else from somewhere in time. But this was like the go-to track for all these years. I mean, they played Heaven Can Wait way more than they played Wasted Years, even though Wasted Years was the big single. And I think that just comes down to that sing-along thing where you can have like competition winners, fans being invited to go on stage, the crew getting on stage and doing the vocals. But it's uh, it's uh, it's not by far any live favorite of mine anyway. So just one trivia thing, which is quite funny about this song, that the original chorus went everything white, because when you go over to the other
Oh,
side, you
oh
know,
God.
yeah, yeah.
Oh no, jeez. Uh,
So and it was also planned to be a single. When you read, uh, I have a sort of a promo version of the album, a US one, and in the press kit
mhm.
with a nice photo of the band. Steve is talking about the single Heaven Can Wait. So they had plans, and they even made a sort of single edit. And as far as I know, what it actually came down to in the end was that the band didn't, or rather, Steve and Rod didn't like the very edit of the song. They didn't think that the flow of the song worked being edited down. So maybe it's a good thing it wasn't released, and Adrian could have his field day with his songs
Yeah.
instead. But I agree, Heaven Can Wait, huge burnout factor. Um, if they never play this song again, okay, when we record this, they are on tour. And I am, as of recording this, spoiler free, sort of. So I guess they are doing this song. But in my universe, they are not playing this song on this tour. And if they never
They
play
are
this song
playing this
ever,
song on this tour?
I have no idea. I'm spoiler
Oh,
free.
oh,
Let's not
oh,
talk about it
yeah.
then.
Okay, right, right. I was gonna say, geez.
But if they never play this song ever again, none would be more pleased than me,
Yeah,
unless they
yeah.
invite me on stage to sing with them, of course.
Yeah. All right, side two opens with Loneliness of the Long Distance Runner. I've This is a song that I actually like a lot better now than I did back then. I mean, I liked it back then too. I don't like the subject matter, don't like the title. I can appreciate it now, but back then, as a 16-year-old, I just looked at it and went, "Huh? They're singing about running?" You know, it just seemed so like unexciting to me. This is again from the band that had titles like Phantom of the Opera, To Tame a Land. These were like, wow, what's this gonna, these epic sounding titles. And Loneliness of the Long Distance Runner. They're singing about running. And I talked about this on my YouTube channel, and somebody blasted me up and down in the comments about it. About, oh, you need to go, and it's based on a movie, and you need to find the movie and watch the movie, and then you'll understand it. Well, guess what? When I was 16 years old, that isn't how I approached a song like, oh, gee, maybe I should dig around and see if there's a movie. And then I don't even know if we had a VCR player, and then try to find the VCR, the VHS tape in 1986 and watch the entire movie and then see if I like, no. When I was 16 years old, I wasn't
Mm,
about to put in that amount of work to try to understand a title that I didn't like.
mm,
I was 16, I saw it and I went, I'd much rather hear them singing about Icarus and, things, monsters and airplanes and things like that, rather than singing about running. That said, it's a pretty cool song, although it kind of occupies the same thing as Somewhere in Time. It's that really fast kind of tempo thing, which is still cool.
mm,
And I absolutely love the part where there's that. I don't know if you'd consider it a guitar. Yeah, I guess it is a guitar solo. It's just you mentioned Michael Schenker earlier. It's
mm,
funny because when I hear this part in this song, I always think of Michael Schenker, that do, 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 that like melodic. I'm assuming
mm.
it's Adrian playing that
Yeah.
real melodic guitar part there. Very Michael Schenker. Like I love that part in the song. So yeah, great song that I've come to over the years. I've definitely come to appreciate it. I just remember as a kid not being particularly excited about listening to Bruce singing about running. It just didn't. It was like, yeah, no, this is not a subject I find interesting. I don't really want to hear Iron Maiden sing about this. And even in 2025, I could care less that there's a movie that it's somehow tied into, or a book or something like that. I don't care.
Mm,
I don't find the subject matter particularly super exciting, although I can sort of get it now a little bit more and pull some things from it as a 16-year-old. It was just another crack. It was a crack in the armor. It was oh boy, like it was probably at that time my least favorite Iron Maiden song title. Next to Heaven Can Wait. But it's
I'm
still a
amazed
cool
that
song. Lots of energy. Love the guitar playing
yeah.
in it. And
I'm amazed you even have a list of least favorite song titles.
well, when you're a kid, you're pretty superficial as a
Yeah,
kid.
yeah,
I once said in one of my videos how one of the things I liked Twisted Sister's music, but I couldn't hang their pictures on my wall. And somebody blasted me for that too, like I was being immature. And I said, well, yeah, I was 12 years old at the time.
yeah,
As a 12-year-old kid, I had pretty like simple parameters. I need lots of guitar. I
yeah,
didn't like synthesizers. Synthesizers ruin things. So I needed lots of guitar. I needed cool song titles about stereotyped metal topics like Egypt and war and monsters and scary things. And it did, the things I needed in life were very simple. And when stuff fell outside of those boundaries, I didn't really give them the time. Let me see. Let me do some research on this. I'm going to go to the library and try to see if maybe there's some deeper meaning. Again, low information age. It
mm,
wasn't like I was hearing Steve give some long explanation about why he wrote these lyrics. It was just you got it, you listen to it, and that was it. And as a 16-year-old, I wasn't going to invest all kinds of time trying to figure out why Iron Maiden was subtly singing about running. I just moved on to, I just thought to myself, well, I just don't like this. And I don't like these lyrics. And I just moved on to, listening to the stuff that I liked, the lyrics that I did
mm,
like. But still
mm,
a great song. I love the
yeah.
music with it, just don't like the lyrics.
At this time in '86, I was just beginning to learn a bit of English. So to me, no matter what the title was, I really didn't have any preconception about what it meant or why did they choose this title. To me, as a non-English speaking youth in Sweden growing up, it was just like, the loneliness of what does that mean? So I had a dictionary looking that up. Okej, långdistanslöparens ensamhet. And to me that sounded a bit like, that's unusual for a hard rock song to be called that. The title is quite long. So I think it's great when you and me are on the opposite side. Because to me, being young, it was like, what's that about? I need to find out more. So I just started to, literally, I started to translate the lyric with my dictionary. And I ended up learning words like determination and futile, which was hardly any words that we were that I was learning in school when I was in, was this fifth or sixth grade or something. So I just found the lyrics very intriguing and exciting. Like, this is different. So you can sing about this, and again, to me, Iron Maiden was so much more. We spoke about this when we talked about Power Slave, that Iron Maiden and their subjects and the way they presented things was like more than just a bunch of songs on the same vinyl. And the loneliness of the long distance runner was just another part of mystique. I had no idea about the film or the novel. It's a, in the first place, it's a novel by an author called Silito, Alan Silito, and then they made it into a movie in the early '60s, which is a black and white movie. I have not seen the movie, but I think that the subject matter of the song is quite interesting. It's literally about this young boy who sort of finds himself. He's led a life plagued with troubles growing up, being a bad boy, and he ends up in this school, and then he sort of finds himself when he's being a long distance runner, and in the end he doesn't. The sort of climax of the story is that he's in this huge competition, and before crossing the very line, he just stops running, because to himself he has already found himself and is already the winner. So why would he have to compete with all the other people? So he just walks away. And I think I read somewhere that was the thing that sort of intrigued Steve to write these lyrics. So I like these lyrics quite a bit, actually. And it also has to be said that it's a testament to the quality of Bruce Dickinson, because he's sort of, I mean, the tempo is high, and there, of course, it's a Steve lyric, so there's a lot of words. Yeah. But Bruce somehow manages to sing this with some sort of feeling, emotion, and conviction, which is, I mean, Bruce is up there with the very best of them. And singing a song like Loneliness of the Long Distance Runner is, of course, just a sort of a proof of his greatness, even.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, for sure.
I think it was 2 years ago, I made this pod with the A to Z guys, the main A to Z. And when I prepared for the episode, I did, sometimes I do this rather pointless, but kind of interesting to me stuff. So I start to count musical themes. How many unique themes and chord progressions with melodies on top is there? And in this song, it's 11.
Wow.
And just to give you a sort of, so how many is that compared to other Maiden songs? So I took a few other Steve songs. Number of the Beast has 8. Run to the Hills has 5. Where Eagles Dare, 8. To Tame a Land, 10. And The Duelists has 10. So this is, I mean, this is just bursting with ideas, this song. And it's quite long too. And with this very intense tempo, you almost, me when I listen to it, you get sort of out of breath listening to it. So when it finally sort of ends, it's like, whew, that's a lot. I mean, it's very intense. But I think that sort of adds to the quality of the song, that the music and the intensity sort of gives you the mindset of the lyric as
Yeah,
well,
I
so
agree
that
with that. Yeah.
it works really well. And another thing that I noticed is that it's quite unusual. It's quite a long song, but it only has the refrain repeating once. So it's only two refrains and choruses in the whole of the song, which is quite unusual. And I just love the intro, the very slow when it starts to build up. And then when the first verse hits, it's just burst out of the gates
Mhm.
with everything just on the track to gato to gato. And I
Yeah.
think it's an amazing song. It was only played live once, and Steve himself, even though his song, he sort of said this is not working. You can find the live version online, sound clip to listen to this song, and to my ears it sounds pretty good. So I have no idea, but somehow they decided that they should drop this song off the set, and maybe they just became tired very quickly, and maybe Nico said, yeah, I can't do this, it's too
Yeah.
intense or something. But yeah, I like the solos, both Adrian and Dave's solo. uh, at this point it's getting rather tedious to say that you enjoy the solos, because
Yeah.
every solo is great.
Yeah, they're
So
good. The songs are good on here. And I agree with you about Bruce's performance. I think Bruce sounds great on this and really gets that sort of energy across, and the tempo and everything of the song does sort of tie in with the lyric. It does sort of give you the feeling of somebody running, in a race or
yeah,
something.
yeah. And the drumming as well, even though it's very intense, Nico can achieve to play it very musically with all his little mannerisms, just adding to the magic of this song. I'm a huge fan of Loneliness of the Long Distance Runner for sure.
Okay, Stranger in a Strange Land. Yeah,
Hmm.
I love this song. This is a great, great song. Earlier I was saying that maybe they should have pivoted, and when I kind of think about it, they do it a number of times on this record, whether it's Wasted Years or a song like Strangers in a Strange Land. Not sure you could have heard a song like that on one of the earlier records, but it's just a great song. I love the vibe of it. I love Bruce's, the way the verses come down, and it's just like, the bass and the drums, the way Bruce is singing in the verses, it kind of comes down in his range a little bit. Hear them calling, rescue me, a strange new world, a stranger. And the way the
Mm.
pre-chorus is great, the chorus is
Yeah,
great.
yeah,
I love that bridge section. Oh, what became of the man that started? That's
yeah,
just
yeah.
fantastic. I mean, that's almost like
Goosebumps
voice.
quality.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm.
That's it, when that comes in that song, that is so, so well done. And almost like a lesser band would have tried to write an entire song around just that, section. But the fact that it's saved for a little later in the song, it works so well. The guitar, so the way it drops down during the guitar solo, Steve has that kind of little bass solo thing, and it's a great song of capturing like a mood. It's a very moody song, but it's still very melodic. It kind of has a storytelling vibe to it that I love, that Bruce does so well when he sings, bringing songs to life, like you just mentioned with Loneliness of the Long Distance Runner. And this had a video that got played like crazy on MTV. Maybe not quite as much as Wasted Years, but it still got played like crazy. And it's always shocking to me that this song wasn't a mainstay in their set list, because
Mm.
if I were to tell you what songs got the most play on MTV, Iron Maiden did not get played on American radio. So for them it was MTV. And what songs got played the most? Run to the Hills, Flight of Icarus, Wasted Years, and Stranger in a Strange Land. And so if you ask somebody who's just a person who watched MTV in the 80s, maybe never even bought an Iron Maiden record, maybe
Mm.
they're a rock fan, but they're not really a metal fan, and you're of my age and you had MTV during, you grew up during this time, you were in high school during this time, you'd recognize this song because this video got played a lot. So it's always shocking to me that this isn't kind of like one of their songs like Wasted Years that stays in like one of their more recognizable songs. It sort of gets forgotten in some ways. It's sort of almost like sometimes perceived as like a deep cut, which always surprises me because again, the
Mm.
video got played
Yeah, yeah.
like crazy, and it just seems like I don't know. You can tell me when how quickly did they drop this from the set list, and it took them a long time to bring this back into the set. At least, you know, to my knowledge, you could probably speak to that more. So I'm always just
Mm.
surprised that this song doesn't get featured. That this isn't a regular mainstay in their set.
Mm. Yeah, it was only played on this tour, and they brought it back not until Bruce and Adrian came back in '99, and and even then they dropped it. And you listeners of this podcast are probably have been waiting. He hasn't mentioned Luis Mariano Rodriguez yet in this podcast. So
Here we
yeah,
go.
in his book, he writes that it was on the request of okay, '99 they had the Ed Hunter tour, and they kicked off the tour in Canada, and they played, uh, and it was on the set for those few dates. What happened was that Adrian Smith's father died, so he had to go back to London, England, for the funeral. And because, according to Lewis's book, uh, "Stranger in a Strange Land" was his father's favorite Maiden song, it has a sort of emotional thing for Adrian. So he said that, can we drop this song because I I might get too emotional if we do this live. So of course, on the set when he went back, Janik was in the band, so they dropped the song. Adrian has all the leads as well, so I think it just became. And I was absolutely gutted that they dropped this song, because that was one of the few songs in that set in '99 that I was looking forward to the most to get to hear live, because they hadn't done it since '86, '87 on the Somewhere on tour, the Somewhere on tour. Anyway, um, yeah, Stranger in Strangeland. I think this song is amazing. Talking about Nico, this is what we get to hear in this song is a bit of what I would call pre-Maiden Nico, the '70s Nico, where he is just playing almost like, it's almost a bit funky. The way he just leans into the rhythm track with his drum parts is unusual. And I think Adrian was very particular about the tempo of this song, that they couldn't do this too fast. It would ruin the song. And there's so much things to say. I have to look into my notes here so I don't miss anything.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned the tempo because you're right. This is another one that really has to be. You cannot play this song any faster or any slower, and Iron Maiden
Yeah,
struggles with that. They have a bad habit of playing things too fast live, and this song has to, it just has to be in that tempo, or it really takes away from the vibe of the song. If it's too fast, it doesn't work.
and if it's too slow, it just gets a
Yeah,
bit
plotting.
boring. Yeah,
Yeah.
plodding is the word. Yeah, exactly. So the backstory to this song is that when they were rehearsing for the album on the Jersey Isles, Adrian had to do a root canal. And when he was going back from the dentist to the hotel that they rented, he was in pain. The rain was pouring down. Remember, this is January of '86. And he get this riff in his head. So he's just wanting to get back as soon as possible so we can pick up a guitar to play this riff. And the title, he borrowed the title from a science fiction novel by Robert A. Heinlein with the same name. But the story of the song is not from that science fiction novel. Some people do think that, but the story is that, and this is also researched by Lewis, so I'm more or less quoting him here. Adrian has talked about in interviews that he has seen this picture of a sailor being preserved in ice. And the backstory is that in 1845 there was this Arctic expedition that got stuck, and the many years later, so if we jump forward to 1984, someone found the remains of this expedition, and the name of the sailor that they found was John Torrington. So a photograph of him was being sort of circulated in the press at the time, because there was this photo of this boy or young man preserved in ice. And that set Adrian's imagination rolling. So he wrote this: what if you all of a sudden came back from being frozen in ice, and what would you make of the world around you and everything? So, and I also know that it's one of Bruce's favorite Maiden songs. He really enjoys the lyrics of the song as well. It's very well written, so of course he likes it. And again, when I heard this played live on the previous tour, Future Past tour, when Adrian started to play his solo, the slow part where the bass is doing, Steve is doing his bass runs underneath or together with Adrian, the tears start to well up again. It was just so beautiful and emotional for me to get to hear this song finally after all these years. And I think also that the very qualities of the solos and the sound, and particularly on this song, the sound of the album is just perfect. The way the drums are played, the sound quality, the mix of the song, the way the guitar sounds and the bass sort of stands out,
Yeah.
which is a bit unusual for, if you call this a sort of AOR Maiden, it's not a typical sound in that aspect, but Stranger in a Strange Land is a 5 out of 5, 10 out of 10 song in every aspect. Bruce's vocal performance, the drums
Yeah.
again, blah, 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 blah. I keep repeating myself, but I just love this song to bits.
And you mentioned the mix does really, it works on this song. I'd say the mix works on this song and Caught Somewhere in Time for me. I didn't know the story behind, I mean, I knew it later. At the time when I got this record, I didn't know it. So to me, it made me think of a space explorer, and it tied in with the album
Mm?
cover. It tied in with the first song on the record. And
And
so,
it works that way too.
yeah, yeah, you can
That's
kind of
why,
think of it in
yeah,
multiple ways.
yeah.
But all right, Deja Vu. It's not my least favorite song on the record. It's a little again, this is the same thing of like I mentioned Sea of Madness after coming off of Caught Somewhere in Time and Wasted Years. When you come out a stranger in a strange land, it's a hard act.
Mm,
It's a hard song to follow, and we've kind of heard this fast gallop already now in Somewhere in Time and Loneliness of the Long Distance Runner. So it's starting to feel a little tedious. You know, maybe this could have been a spot where Stranger in a Strange Land brings the mood down. It's a pretty moody song, kind of heavy
mm,
in its not heavy in a Black Sabbath chordal way, but just heavy in the mood of the song. And they
mm,
could have brought us down. Maybe this is where the mysterious Bruce acoustic song could have gone, or they could have
mm.
done something like that and taken the mood down a little bit more. Because this one, even though I like it, I like the chorus, feel like I've been here before, but it's got that fast kind of gallop thing, which again is starting to become. I'm not conscious of it at this point, but it's starting to become little tedious towards for
Mm.
me.
But it's
So
not really a gallop, is it? It's not. It's
yeah, it's a little,
yeah,
but the tempo is kind of
yeah, yeah, yeah.
like
The
very
tempo is high.
similar
Mm,
to what we've heard before. So they could have been served to maybe do something really different in this spot. I think it would have served the flow of the record. You know, Stranger in a Strange Land takes you into this very moody place, and to maybe drop it down and to give yourself a time to sort of catch your breath and settle yourself after Stranger in a Strange Land, and then to end the
mm,
record with, Alexander the Great. It might have been a nice flow, but th this one to me just kind of it's a five. I like it better than Heaven Can Wait. Is it my second least favorite song on the record? Probably, I'm gonna say yes. I actually like Sea of Madness better. So for me, six, I'm gonna give it, if I give Heaven Can Wait a 5 out of 10, I'm gonna give Deja Vu a 6 out of 10.
mm.
Not a terrible
Uh,
song, but again, it's just kind of like it's just kind of it's it's just there and it struggles to keep up. It's not as good as Wasted Years. It's not as good as Caught Somewhere in Time. It's not certainly not as good as Stranger in a Strange Land. It's not even as good as Loneliness of the Long Distance Runner. It's
mm.
it is what it is.
Uh, I think that it's the shortest song on the album, and it's very intense with ideas. I think we mentioned earlier that this is a Dave
Dave, yeah.
music and Steve lyric, and uh, Steve. The way that they tell this is that when Dave has ideas, he rarely comes up with a complete song that goes, oh, here's the intro section going into the verse and it goes like this, and then there's this chorus bit. But he has more like a tape of riff ideas or chord progressions or melody, guitar melodies. And then sort of Steve sorts them out and makes a song out of it. And when they make songs like that, and this is one example we have heard on albums before, and we will hear on albums to come, that it often starts off with something very soft and a very melodic Dave solo. What is kind of unique for this song is that the only solo in the song is basically that opening with the open chord strumming and the guitar solo bit. Then it's just lead parts with harmonies with Adrian and Dave playing together for the instrumental parts of this song. I would say that this is, and this is just my sort of educated guess as a Maiden nerd, but I would say that this is like a deep cut fan favorite by many, and I think a part of the mystique and the attraction of this song comes down to that they never done this live. And before starting to rehearse the tour in '86, they sort of toyed with the idea that they should be doing the whole album from start to finish with old songs thrown in. But this was the first song that they thought it's not working. So this was the song that they dropped first, and then they, like I've said before, they dropped a few one. And Alexander the Great, which is the next one, they couldn't get it right, so they just dropped that because it was too hard to play. What do I think about Deja Vu? It is sort of anonymous among the competition, in the competition of this album. So I sort of agree with you that it's probably my second to last favorite on the album. Saying that, it's still better than so much music in the world. So if you say it's the second to last favorite, it sounds like I don't like this song, but
Right.
I do like it. But in this competition, it doesn't stand out. I haven't really thought. You said something that which I think is actually kind of true, that maybe this spot on the album, the second to last, is like where you put the filler. That's like the
Hmm.
universal truth of sectioning uh, uh, a CD or a vinyl in these days. And the second to last is like that's where you put the throwaway track. And I wouldn't say that Deja Vu is that, but maybe in the competition of all these other songs, maybe this is it. Again, you said that maybe this spot is where they could have put like a Tears of the Dragon or Ark of Space. Coming off Stranger in Strange Land, going into Deja Vu or something else, yeah, I can hear that would have worked pretty well. I think what sort of does that, but not to such a great extent, is the very melodic, calm intro of the song. So we sort of get off Stranger in
Yeah.
Strangeland. You just pick it down for a few seconds with this soft, very beautiful solo by Dave, and then we're just back racing again, like so much stuff on the rest of the album. So yeah, I like it. It's always nice to hear Dave's ideas turn into to music. But it would also be interesting to hear him work with another with a guitar player, like if Dave and Adrian got together to write a song.
Yeah.
But that's another story for another topic for another podcast. But that would be interesting. So yeah, Deja Vu.
And it's the shortest song on the album. It
Yeah.
doesn't, I don't have a problem with it. I guess it's just to put it that way. So, an album, just by nature, there's some songs that tend to come across better than others. So it is what it is. I don't have a problem with it. Like if it was some 8 minute song that went on like this, I might say, okay, this is occupying too much space on the record.
Mm.
But it's not, and it's every album has songs like this, and this is that song on this record. All right, Alexander the Great. What's to say about this song? Uh, I like the intro. I like the spoken word thing. It makes it sound pretty epic. Starts off pretty moody. Uh, the mix does well for this intro. I think when everything kicks in, it's a pretty cool. I love the part in the song where there's like the gong, boom, boom, boom,
Mm.
boom, 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 boom. That's probably my favorite part in the song. And then when it moves to that other, it's like a doom, doo, 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 doo. That is without question my favorite part in the song. Uh, and again, maybe this is sort of what Deja Vu suffers from with its placement on the record. Maybe this is what this song suffers from it with its placement in the catalog. Meaning you're at this point you've been programmed now to expect an epic,
Mm.
right? Last song on the record, or Phantom of the Opera wasn't the last song on the record, but somewhere on the record, we had Phantom of the Opera, we had Hallowed Be Thy Name, To Tame the Land, Rime of the Ancient Mariner. So you're sort of sitting down and you're okay, here it is. I always love this part. And this one comes across as cool, but not as good as the other ones. Sort of the same thing with like Deja Vu in the context of the record. Good song. I like the chorus. But when you got these other bangers on the album, it kind of sounds slightly forgettable. Alexander the Great, is it the best Iron Maiden album closer? No. Do I enjoy listening to it? Yeah, because there are some interesting things in it, but and it's hard to say what it is. This again, this is, and I'm glad you said too, like when you say Deja Vu is your second to least favorite song, doesn't mean you don't like it. And it's the same thing here. It's not a case of, oh, I think this is a 0 out of 10 song or something like that. But it's when you're stacking it up against the competition
Mm.
and it just doesn't live. I can't say it's as good as Phantom of the Opera or To Tame a Land or any of the other epics. And it sounds like he's going for the same thing and he just sort of misses. He just sort of misses slightly rather than all those other songs. They're with darts, the bullseye right in the middle. This
Mm.
one's slightly off to the side, close,
Mm.
but it's not exactly a bullseye. And this is maybe where they could have, with some honesty or maybe some self-awareness, said, hey, you know what? We've done this and we've done it really, really well. Uh, let's just let's not do this anymore at the end of records. Try to put an epic on because we've said all we need to say with that. The subject matter isn't as exciting to me as, it's Iron Maiden, the historical thing. They do this a lot, right? But I remember thinking that this subject matter wasn't as exciting as To Tame a Land and Rime of the Ancient Mariner and Hallowed Be Thy Name and Phantom of the Opera. Uh, and you can't help but again in your head to compare these. Again, it's like deja vu. If before I had heard the record, somebody played me deja vu, and I went, "Wow, really cool, man. This is great." But when you put it in the context, you're kind of like, "Ooh, but this is better, and this." You can't help but be
Mm,
affected by the things that are around it. And
mm,
at this point in time, I could say this about the whole album, and maybe this song represents this for me that right? We're six studio albums in at this point. I can't help but compare it to the five studio albums before it
mm,
because at this point I had only been listening to Iron Maiden for 4 or 5 years. So it was still all really fresh. It was still 30, 40 years later. I'm like, oh yeah, I'd rather listen to this than some of that other stuff because I'm burnt out on the other stuff. I've heard the other stuff a million times. But at the time, all this stuff was in competition with each other. I could put it that way. They
mm,
were all fighting to occupy my time. My cassette collection was starting to build up, and my time was starting to become I had less and less. I couldn't listen to everything I had. There was a point in time where I only had 5 cassettes in my collection, but by this point I had a lot more. So it came down to like, do I want to listen to Tame a Land or do I want to listen to Alexander the Great? I've only got 10 minutes here. I'm gonna go with To Tame a Land, again, because there wasn't that burnout factor or anything less left. The cool song, glad they brought it back in the set list. But again, it just feels like it's just to sum it up, it's just not as good as the other songs that they've written like this. Let's say it that way. Steve's other songs that he's written like this is not as good as a good song, but doesn't live up to what he had done before this.
mm. Steve said it took him quite a while to get his song right, where the different parts should go and so on. So I think he says in this press release it took like more than 2 weeks for him to write this song. And
And it feels like that. It
yeah,
feels like that. It feels like I get the impression that Rime of the Ancient Mariner was just Steve locked in an athlete in his prime that's just flowing, man. They are locked into the zone and everything. I keep bringing up Rime of the Ancient Mariner on this episode.
mm,
Sorry, everybody, but it's Steve locked in his zone. It's just working.
yeah,
It is just working. The creative energy is just flowing out of them. And what you just said right there is what I think this song sort of feels like. Like this song, it took more effort. It was harder to get it together. And I can sort of picture Steve like having to force it a little bit, like having, okay, I need to get it. How come this isn't just coming out of me the way it came out of me before? Now I'm sort of trying to force, or I have to pull down to sort of get this together. It's harder. It was harder
yeah.
work to put this one together. Whereas I get the impression, "Hallowed be thy name" and stuff like that. I could just picture Steve like, "Oh man, this is great," and the ideas are just flowing, and he's writing lyrics, and the riffs are coming, and it's like, "Oh yeah, this is just flowing out of him." Whereas this now is starting to like his songwriting is
But
starting to struggle a little.
just to disagree with you a bit there. I mean, you're a songwriter yourself, and I think you've stumbled upon that you have like a bunch of ideas that you try to get to work together, and you hear something and you don't really know how to get there. So maybe you have to try to, I mean, change around the so-called building blocks, the different parts in this case of the song to make it fit and make it work. And being a bit more laborious doesn't really have to say anything about the quality of the finished product. In this case, a song called Alexander the Great. I don't necessarily see it that way. I see what you're getting at, that when you are in a flow, you sort of things come more effortless, but I don't think that in itself sort of says that this isn't a good of a song because of that. It has quite diverse ideas and different parts, and I think you had to sort of build it up. And I think they said somewhere in an interview, someone, I think it was Nico, that talked about that they sort of had to build a song in the studio, and when it came to can we do this live, it turned out no, it's a bit too hard to actually pull it off and play it as good as it sounds on the album. But at the same time, yeah, it's not the best closing track of the 80s. And these days is this sort of ongoing joke about Wikipedia lyric, just a listing of things that that Alexander the Great did during his life. Of course, there were no Wikipedia back
Yeah.
in the mid 80s, so I guess Steve must have read quite a few books to get the lyrics right for this. I actually, now when I think about it, I've never heard any historian say if this is an accurate lyric or if it's just a or if it's not. Anyway, I don't think that the lyric matter and the listing of events in Alexander the Great's life is what you bring with you home from this song. I think it's the more or less like you were onto like that part in this song is good, like that with the gong and everything, the way it
Yeah.
builds up. And I also enjoy very much the I think it's in 7.
Yeah, yeah. That part's really cool. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really cool. And apparently Dave tried to play the solo and he passed it on to Adrian to sort of, oh, you have a go at this. It's a bit, and if you listen to a few YouTube videos from the tour, Future Past tour, when they finally did this song, you can hear that it's not easy for Adrian to pull it off even now, with all these years hearing the song. So it is a bit tricky, but I think it's cool. I like the song. I mean, talking about deep cut favorites, this song was pretty much
Yeah.
like
The definition of a deep cut. Yeah.
yeah, it became like this mass psychosis
Yeah.
that, oh,
Uh-huh.
Alex, it's the best song in the world that's never been played live. I don't agree, to start off with, but at the same time, it's really cool actually that the band sort of finally thought that, okay, apparently the fans want to hear this song. Let's give them this song as a gift.
Yeah.
All these years later, I mean that's pretty cool. There's a lot of bands that don't do things like
Yeah.
that, so I really like that. Um, what's more to say about Alexander the Great? Um,
He died of fever in Babylon.
famously,
That's the only thing left to say about Alexander the Great.
it's the only thing left to say. Yeah. Yeah, again, big shout out to Bruce for delivering these lyrics
Hmm.
with such professionality. And I mean, you must give it to Bruce that going into making this album, the first thing that you experience is your band and your producer saying, "No, no, Bruce, we won't do these songs. Sorry, they're not good enough. They're wrong. We should not go in this direction." And I mean, of course, Maiden being like his day job, his income. But I mean, again, we're talking about artists that maybe something like that would be okay, guys. But if you don't want to do that, if you just want to
Yeah.
continue doing the same thing one more time, maybe you should find another singer because I'm done. But
Yeah.
he just took this, he just sort of deep dived into his occupation of being the singer in Iron Maiden, and he did that with so much quality. And Alexander the Great is for sure a testament to his capability as a vocalist. Mm.
Now, if the guys in the band thought that Alexander the Great was a better song, let's take Hallowed Be Thy Name, which is pretty much a staple in their set list, right?
Mm.
Always in the set list. If the guys in the band felt that this was a better song than Hallowed Be Thy Name, would they have worked to find a way to put it in the set? And if it got a reaction better than Hallowed Be Thy Name, would they have kept it in the set? I guess
That's a that's a really hard question actually, because at that time in '86, "Hallowed Be Thy Name" was like they played it every gig,
yep.
and they continued to play it for every gig. So did they? And I think I've even read interviews back in the '80s where like Steve was talking about, now my best song so far is like
hmm
"Hallowed Be Thy Name."
Yeah.
So I think even he in '86 sort of kind of knew that
Right.
maybe Alexander Great isn't that great, pun intended.
Alexander the So-So. Yeah, and I
So
guess that's like sort of my point with I even think that they must have been aware of that when when Steve wrote "Hallowed Be Thy Name," they immediately put it in the set list.
oh yeah.
And they had no problem knocking out something from the first album or Killers because I think they knew that this is a great song. And then
Mm.
it was reaffirmed when they played it out live, and it goes over great live, and it's been in the set list ever since then. If they truly felt that way about, and I'm sure Hallowed Be Thy Name is a long song with some challenging sections. If they truly felt that way about Alexander the Great, they would have put it in the set list.
Mm.
They would have found a way to put it in the set. Rhyme of the Ancient Mariner is a very involved song. Phantom of the
Mm.
Opera is an involved song. They would have
And they
found,
played Rhyme of the Ancient Mariner on this tour.
yeah. So they would
Mm.
have found if they felt like, oh, this is better than Rhyme of the Ancient Mariner. This is better than Hallowed Be Thy Name. It's just, and this happens to every band, right? Their first record, you're
Yeah,
playing live. You only have 10 songs to play live. As
the
you get
bar
right,
go. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. And you have more and more songs that you're like, we can't take that out of the set list. We can't take Hallowed Be Thy Name out. We can't take Run to the Hills. We can't take Number of the Beast. You have all these songs that they just lock themselves into the set list because they're great songs and the crowd really reacts to them. They go over live and it takes something. But when Wasted Years showed up, they didn't have a problem putting Wasted Years and knocking something out of the set list for Wasted Years,
Mm.
right? Because they realized it was a great song that's going to go over well live. And it did go over well live. And it's been a regular of their set list since then. So they obviously didn't feel that way about Alexander the Great or Deja Vu or some of these other songs. They must have been aware enough that like, oh, hey, this is a good song, but it's not. And to me, that's always kind of a litmus test with bands. How much do they believe in it that they're going to go out and make it a regular in their set list, or
Mm.
what are they going to knock out of the set list to put this
Yeah.
this song in? And as time goes on, it gets harder and harder. But all right. Well, there you go. You got any final thoughts to wrap up somewhere in time from a pod somewhere in time?
Yeah. Is this album so good we have to name the pod after this album? Is that the case, or should it have been a pod of mind or a piece of pod? Or
Strangers in a Strange Pod.
yeah,
Alexander the Pod. That
that
actually
would
would
have
have
been
been
great.
good. Alexander the Pod.
That would have been great.
All right. We may be changing the name of the pod
Yeah, maybe,
afterwards.
maybe. No, seriously. Final words, final thoughts. I think this album. I think that a witness to its sort of uniqueness is that I know people who aren't like huge Maiden fans, but they really like Somewhere in Time. And as far as I understand, the reason why they like this is because it is, I'm not saying it is AOR Maiden, but it's Maiden sort of glancing a bit in that direction. And it mainly comes down to what we talked about a lot during this pod, the sound quality, the more lush, the reverby sort of sound, and the songwriting of uh, primarily Adrian, but also by Steve in Heaven Can Wait. So I think that is the reason why this album has so many fans that aren't like huge Iron Maiden fans that enjoy Somewhere in Time too. I really like this album too. Again, I've been listening to this one since I was a kid. I'm still listening. I've been sort of on and off about the sound of this album over the years, but I guess I just sort of grew accustomed to it. But I do prefer the more uh, the more direct sound of Power Slave and Seven Son that came after this. But yeah, how about you, John? Do you have any final thoughts?
Yeah, it's just this is an album for me that I can't help but put it in the context of my life, being that this is right before I would start drifting away from metal, and nothing because of this record. I loved it when it came out. Maiden was, I just looked, it went to number 11 on the US Billboard chart, whereas Power Slave went to 21. So they were very popular. Loved this record at the time, but with time on my side, I can kind of see what's look back now and think about what was coming around the corner for me, and I can sort of trace it back and start to see again that this was maybe where the cracks in the almighty Iron Maiden armor began to show ever so slightly for me. It's just the dam where there's just a slight little trickle of water starting to come out. It's just that the thin little hairline crack is now sh has started to shown. But it's an album that I return to a lot. And like you, the mix is something I've fallen in and out of love with. You made a really good point that this is an album that I think somebody who's not really a metal fan, but maybe they're a hard rock fan, this actually might be, and maybe besides the mix, this might be a good album for somebody like that who's coming from more of the hard rock side of things because of the more melodic Adrian songs on here. Uh, it's just an interesting album in their catalog, and I would say
Mm.
it's a pivot point for them. Here and Seventh Son are like kind of the last of Maiden fans will argue. Some fans will say Power Slave was the last one. Some will say Somewhere in Time, and some will say Seventh Son. But we're getting into that zone now of like where they start to drop in quality for various people at different times. But depending on who you are, your age, where you were with Iron Maiden at this time, this is where uh, things are going to start getting a little bit slippery for the band, and things are going to get a little bit unsure. And when you look back through time and history, and Bruce, we talked about this already in the podcast, maybe this is the album where the seed is planted for Bruce's eventual departure. But it's still a great record that I love to come back to. So,
And Adrian's too, of course,
yeah, yeah,
because he.
exactly. Right.
Mm,
Yeah. So, all right. There you go. A pod somewhere in time discussing somewhere in time.
mm,
We have a bunch of other things you can check out if you're interested. If you're watching here on the YouTube channel, Layer the Alchemist. If you're not, I have a YouTube channel, Layer the Alchemist, and you can see the full video version of this. I know somebody complained in the last one that there were too many commercials. And it's unfortunately, I looked and I tried to see if there's a way for me to change that, and I couldn't find it. I'm going to look again. I'll try to make it so that, unfortunately, I think YouTube just sort of automatically inserts these things. But I'll try to do better with that. Let's see. Matthias has a band, Dead Cosmonaut. I'm pretty sure if you're a fan of Iron Maiden that you will enjoy Dead Cosmonaut. They play great classic sounding heavy metal. And I have some other podcasts that I do. I do an AC/DC podcast with author Martin Popoff called Kicked in the Teeth, an AC/DC podcast. And I do a podcast with my friend Darren called Into the Void, a Black Sabbath podcast. Anything else did I miss out there? I feel like I'm missing something, but I don't know, maybe not. Did I get everything?
I think so. Yeah.
All right, I think we've said it all. Thanks for listening, and we'll be back we're going to be doing a special episode addressing the B-sides, and there's sort of a bootleg album around this time that we're also going to
Mhm.
be discussing. So keep on the lookout for that, and we will catch you out there somewhere in time.